Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. We are having another storage unit auction story today, so grab some snacks, drinks, sit comfortably, we're getting started. For 20 years, Jake and Sarah watched their parents build a quiet, respectable life in the sprawling suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia. Their father was a heavy concrete contractor. He was a man with calloused hands who firmly believed in two things: hard cash and solid foundations. Their mother was a dedicated school teacher who meticulously tracked every penny of the family budget in small, spiral-bound notebooks. They were good, proud people who never asked anyone for help. But when they both passed away unexpectedly 3 years ago, Jake and Sarah inherited more than just the family home with the tall pine trees in the front yard. They inherited a mountain of medical debt their parents had desperately tried to keep a secret. Jake, now 38, worked long, exhausting hours as a heavy machinery mechanic. His younger sister, Sarah, was 32 and worked as administrator at a local medical clinic. Every single evening, they sat across from each other at the kitchen table, staring at a financial spreadsheet that never seemed to balance. The bank had finally sent its last formal warning. The mortgage on their childhood home had to be brought current by the end of May, or a foreclosure sign was going up on the front lawn in June. They had exactly $550 left in their shared bank account. It wasn't even enough to cover a fraction of the payment. The idea to look into storage auctions didn't come from a sudden stroke of genius. It came from an older mechanic Jake worked with. The older man noticed Jake looking stressed and told him to check out an industrial storage units on the outskirts of Atlanta. He explained that sometimes independent contractors and cash-heavy businesses hide physical assets in storage lockers to keep them off the official books during tax season or divorces. Jake was incredibly skeptical, but on Tuesday evening, with the weight of losing his family home pressing down on him, he logged onto a local auction website. He scrolled past dozens of normal-looking units filled with old furniture and cardboard boxes until he hit Unit 402. The photograph provided by the facility was terrible. It showed a slightly dented, bright red roll-up door, but the interior was completely obscured. The official description was enough to make any professional buyer run away: contents unknown, unit filled with sand. Every professional bidder on the website was completely ignoring it. But Jake had spent his entire life around construction sites. He leaned in and zoomed in on the grainy photograph. He didn't just see a random pile of dirt dumped in a room. He saw high-grade, white masonry sand, and more importantly, it was perfectly precisely leveled from wall to wall, as if someone had spent hours using a laser guide and a screed board to make it perfectly flat. Jake turned the laptop toward his sister. "Sarah, look at this," he said quietly. "Nobody pays monthly rent on a commercial storage unit in Atlanta just to park a load of sand. That sand is leveled. This is either a very expensive, elaborate joke or it is very clever vault." Sarah looked at the screen, then looked at the brother's tired face. She thought about their father, a man who also loved to hide his cash and valuables exactly where people wouldn't think to look. "Take the risk, Jake," she said, her voice steady. "Things really can't get any worse for us right now." Jake set a strict limit for $400. Because the listing looked like a terrible prank, the bidding was virtually non-existent. He won Unit 402 for exactly $320. Early Saturday morning, Jake and Sarah arrived at the facility in Jake's work truck, bringing heavy shovels, thick work gloves, and empty buckets. When the facility manager unlocked the red door and rolled it up, a few other buyers who were hanging around the lot actually burst out laughing. The unit was exactly what the picture showed. It was filled wall to wall with fine white sand, packed nearly 3 feet high against the back wall. The manager shook his head, offering a strange piece of history. He told them the previous renter was an older gentleman who always paid his bill in cash, a full year in advance. One night, many years ago, the man backed a commercial dump truck right up to the door, filled the unit, locked it, and simply never returned. The crowd of buyers walked away, chuckling and calling it the most expensive sandbox in the state of Georgia. Jake didn't laugh. He just put on his gloves, grabbed his heavy shovel, and stepped inside. It was grueling, back-breaking work. Masonry sand is incredibly dense and heavy. Jake dug methodically, pacing himself, while Sarah used a smaller towel to sift through every layer he removed. They worked in complete silence for 3 hours. The physical labor was exhausting, and doubt started to creep into Jake's mind. Maybe it really was just a joke. Maybe he had just thrown away their last $300 on a pile of dirt. That's actually very strange situation and very strange storage unit, let's say inside thing. So I hope they find something very interesting inside that sand, and hope it brings them more money than they ever could imagine. But just as he was about to suggest taking a break, Jake's shovel struck something solid. It wasn't the dull scrape of concrete, it was a sharp, heavy thud of metal hitting metal. Jake instantly dropped to his knees and started frantically clearing the sand away with his bare hands. Sarah rushed over to help. Together, they unearthed a heavy steel lockbox, the exact kind commercial contractors used to bolt down expensive tools in the back of their trucks. The steel was slightly rusted from the moisture in the sand, but the heavy padlock was completely intact. Jake grabbed his heavy pry bar from the truck. He wedged it into a shackle and threw his weight against it until the lock snapped with a loud crack. He opened the heavy steel lid. Inside the box, resting securely in waterproof bags, were thick rolls of $20 bills wrapped in heavy rubber bands. Next to the cash was a dark velvet pouch containing a heavy, antique gold pocket watch, but it was the item resting directly in the center of the box that made them both freeze. It was a single, sealed white envelope, written completely across the front of the envelope. In thick black permanent marker were two words, Layer 1. I am so excited for them. They already found something very worthy, and I hope they found more. Sarah caught her breath. She looked up from the box and stared at the massive mountain of sand still filling the back half of the storage unit. Jake, she whispered, her eyes wide, this isn't trash, this is a security system. They instantly understood the sheer brilliance of the setup. Sand is incredibly heavy, exhausting to move, and impossible to dig through quickly or quietly. Anyone trying to break into this unit and steal what was inside would need hours of loud physical labor. The lockbox wasn't the treasure, it was just a decoy to satisfy anyone who dug down a few feet. To find the real reason someone had parked a dump truck in this room, they were going to have a dig all the way down to the concrete floor. Jake and Sarah didn't take a break. The words Layer 1 acted like a shot of pure adrenaline. They spent the next 4 hours moving hundreds of pounds of sand, creating a massive crater in the center of the unit. Their muscles ached and their clothes were soaked with sweat, but they didn't stop until Jake's heavy shovel finally scraped against bare concrete. He dropped to his knees and used his gloved hands to sweep the remaining dirt away. There, flush with the concrete floor, was a heavy industrial steel hatch. It was tightly secured by 4 thick bolts. Jake grabbed a heavy wrench from his toolbox. The bolts were stiff but protected by the dry sand. They hadn't rusted. With a loud metallic squeak, he broke them loose, removed them, and heaved the heavy steel door open. Beneath the floor was a shallow, completely watertight vault. Resting inside, protected from the elements, were 3 distinct items. The first was a thick, durable canvas bank bag. Sarah unzipped it and looked inside. There were dozens of neatly organized paper envelopes, each labeled in the previous owner's handwriting: dentist, roof repair, Texas. At the very bottom of the canvas bag was a thick vacuum-sealed package. The label simply read, "If needed." Sarah carefully cut the plastic open. It was packed tightly with stacks of $100 bills. Wow. I'm impressed. This is something I can't believe my ears and my eyes reading this. The second item was a heavy plastic bin filled with leather-bound ledgers. Sarah flipped through the pages. It was a meticulous, handwritten shadow budget. The man had spent decades keeping an entirely separate financial life, quietly hiding his cash assets where nobody could ever track them. The third item was a small, incredibly heavy digital safe. There was no keyhole, just a digital keypad. They didn't have to hire a locksmith or guess the combination. The previous owner hadn't even trusted his own memory. The 6-digit code was hastily stretched directly into the metal on the back on the safe. Jake punched in the numbers, the heavy door clicked and swung open. Sarah shined her flashlight inside, expecting to see more cash or maybe gold jewelry. Instead, they found what Jake later called mechanical hearts. Resting perfectly inside the safe were dozens of small custom glass vacuum tubes. Sealed inside each tube was a completely assembled, pristine watch movement. They were the internal beating mechanisms of high-end Rolex and Patek Philippe watches. Even without the outer casings, they were beautiful. They saw solid gold rotors, microscopic ruby gears, and incredibly rare, flawless mechanical parts. Beneath the glass tube sat 3 massive, heavy bars of raw, unrefined silver. Because Jake and Sarah were smart, mature adults, they knew exactly how to handle this. They didn't take these incredibly rare items to a local pawn shop, and they didn't tell anyone what they had found. They handled everything with absolute discretion. 2 days later, Jake contacted a master horologist, a specialized watchmaker in downtown Atlanta who handled elite vintage restorations. The watchmaker was absolutely stunned. He explained that the previous owner was either a genius level master repairman or a very high-level gray market parts dealer. Every single mechanism was authenticated and purchased by the watchmaker as an incredibly rare replacement part. They sold the raw silver bars to a licensed precious metal dealer at the current daily market value. And as for the cash from the canvas bags, they used it the very next morning. Jake and Sarah walked into their parents' bank, sat down at the mortgage officer's desk, and paid off the entire remaining balance on their childhood home in one single final transaction. When the long, careful process of liquidating the vault was completely finished and all the appraisals were done, the total haul came out exactly $138,000. Wow, that's amazing. On a warm, quiet evening at the end of May, Jake and Sarah were sitting together on the front porch of the house that the bank could no longer threaten to take away. Parked in the driveway was Jake's newly purchased work truck. It wasn't a flashy sports car, it was just a reliable, heavy-duty pickup paid for entirely in cash. Jake was leaning against the wooden railing, holding the heavy gold pocket watch they had found in the very first lockbox. He had decided to keep it as a reminder of where they had been. He looked out at the sun setting over the tall Georgia pines. "You know, Sarah," Jake said quietly, "all those professional buyers at the facility were laughing at us because all they saw was a mountain of dirt. But Dad always used to tell us, if you want to find something real, you can't be afraid to get your hands dirty." Sarah smiled, leaning back in her chair. For the first time in 3 agonizing years, she finally let out a long, deep breath. She realized that a true family legacy isn't always something neatly typed up in a lawyer's office and handed to you in a pristine folder. Sometimes, a legacy is something you have to dig out of a rusted metal box buried under 3 feet of sand. This is the story. Personally, me, I am really impressed and I'm so happy for them that they found very wealthy and worthy things and they could, come up with a happy ending out of it. And I'm interested to hear your stories if you have such, so please drop some comments, share your own experience, and if you like the video, please give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and see you the next time.